Produce verse, check out that wordplay.
Welcome to the Music Box Supper Club. We're in the flat. Cleveland still showed up, even though they lost last night's Game 4. There will be at least 6 games. The champs continue. They still should be excited. Nothing to be concerned about. Thank you guys so much for showing up. Welcome to First Take. I'm Carrie Champion. That's Skip Bayless. That's Stephen A. Smith. Again, thank you guys so much for showing up this morning. Give yourselves a round of applause for them.
I know it's been a little bit of a tough morning for you Cavs fans, but trust me on this. This great series is just getting started.
Okay.
Have you given up already?
Oh.
Let's talk about it.
All right, let's do it.
On the show today, he's a friend of the show. He actually does the show Open. I call him a sports analyst light because he thinks he's a third debater. He often gives you a hard time for various reasons.
About LeBron James.
About LeBron James. We're talking about Wale. He'll be on the show today, you guys. So that'll be exciting.
Wait, I thought he had been permanently replaced by Shump.
Don't start.
No?
Okay, come on. Shump is a guest. He's just a guest for our show. Wale has the Open.
Don't disrespect Wale by thinking Shump is on that level. We know better.
All right, so let's get right to it, you guys. The Warriors tied the series, led by Andre Iguodala, the veteran. The 11-year veteran had 22 points. We're already booing. Okay. Well, that's fine. He held LeBron to 4-14 shooting when defending him. Warriors hit 12 three-pointers. Curry went 4 for 7 and Iguodala 4 for 9. Meanwhile, the Cavs just went cold on the floor. Their best shooter yesterday was Timofey Mozgov. Stephen A., what was the biggest reason, in your opinion, the Warriors were able to turn things around?
Well, I think starting Iguodala did a multitude of things for them. First of all, he played great. That's number one. He hit 8 of 15 shots, 4 of 9 three-pointers. He was hounding LeBron defensively, in his face all night long. And more importantly, their ability and willingness to finally double up on LeBron and get the ball out of his hands proved vital. But the reason why I say starting Andre Iguodala was so pivotal is because Golden State made a commitment to quickening the pace, speeding up the game. And they hoodwinked the Cleveland Cavaliers. Because the Cleveland Cavaliers came out like gangbusters. They went on a 7-0 run to start the game. They were feeling themselves. And that was the biggest mistake they could have ever made. Because what happens is that when you're sitting there, even though it's very, very early and you're dominant, you're feeling an adrenaline and you're pushing the ball up the floor. And it was the stupidest thing they could have done. A matter of fact, I'm willing to venture to say we've all been wrong when we've said LeBron has been the de facto coach. Because the reality is that you've got to be smarter. And I know LeBron is no dummy. You've got 6 deep. You're pushing the ball up the floor. Why are you doing that? Why? Because there's a game. There's a 48-minute game to be played. And Golden State clearly had that mentality that it's about the marathon. It's not the sprint. Whatever you did now doesn't mean you're going to do it later. And they immediately, after that 7-0 run by Cleveland to start the game, went on a 31-15 run. Immediately, before the first quarter even ended. And even at that time, Cleveland started looking a little gassed. And so as a result of that, you're only playing 6. There's no Shawn Marion playing. There's no Mike Miller playing. There's nobody coming off your bench for you really other than James Jones. And as a result, you want to count J.R. Smith. But I'm just saying, when you look at it from that perspective, bottom line is Cleveland had nothing. They had no legs. And what did I say about Dellavedova? We all thought he was going to be 100% after he went to the hospital for IV or whatever. He was cramping up. That hit to LeBron James. He clearly wasn't the same, even though he didn't look that impressive to begin with at the start of the game. Once he crashed his head into that camera, they did think about it and put it in its proper perspective. They were so desperate for LeBron that they didn't forget concussion protocol, because that's a different subject for another day. They couldn't even take him back to the locker room to take a few minutes to stitch him up. They literally glued his wound together so he wouldn't have to leave the court. That's how bad it was, because in the 19 minutes in this series that LeBron James has not played, without him, the Cleveland Cavaliers have shot 17% from the field whenever he has not been on the floor. So I take all of those things into consideration, and I pointed to the brilliance of Steve Kerr in this game. I noticed that everybody want to call him brilliant now, but when he was messing up the first 3 games, the only person that said anything was myself, Skip, and my man Christopher Mad Dog Russo on Sirius XM. Nobody else had anything bad to say about Steve Kerr, but now today we're glowing about him. But it is appropriate to glow about him today and Alvin Gentry and those boys, because they made a brilliant move in inserting Andre, not just because of how he played, but because he facilitated dictating pace, meaning up in the tempo. And Cleveland, by the time the fourth quarter arrived, they had absolutely positively nothing left. The starters shot 1 for 9 from the field. The reserves shot 1 of 9 from the field. They combined for 2 of 18 from the field, which was 11%. They gave you nothing because they had nothing. I thought it was really smart on Golden State's part.
You made a lot of good points. And by the way, I compliment you on your Delhi point yesterday. You were correct. His tank was not completely full. I thought it would be. I thought it was for a while, but he ran out of gas before I thought he would. And that was an issue this team faced. Okay, here's the biggest picture on what happened last night. I'm fond of Doc Rivers' comment that he made long ago. It's a make or miss league. And I'm going to simplify last night down to its lowest form of one team made 3-point shots and the other one couldn't. As simple as that is. For whatever reasons, when one team goes 12 of 30 from 3 and your team here in Cleveland goes 4 of 27, you're probably going to lose that game. So it's just make or miss for whatever psychological reasons we want to read into it. Now, to my bottom line from what happened last night. And I don't want to shame you folks, because I love this city and I appreciate seriously from my heart that you came out here today. But I got to call it as I saw it. That my bottom line from last night was that LeBron James, who I acknowledge is the best player on the planet, had a bad game in a big game. Simple as that. Bad game in a big game. He was not as engaged as I expected him to be from the start. It reminded me a little bit of last year's finals when the series went 1-1 back to Miami. You remember this? And the Spurs won games 3 and 4 in a shock to me as a Spurs fan, because LeBron didn't seem engaged as I expected him to be. I can't give him a pass for being tired or worn down or mentally worn out or whatever you want to say. You always tell me he's the best conditioned athlete on the planet, and I accept that. So I don't want to hear that. He is LeBron James, and his team feeds off him, off his energy, his playmaking, and his shot making, just the way the Warriors feed off Steph Curry. Steph Curry was invisible to me in games 2 and 3. As an MVP, he came up really small. And his team came up small because it's looking to him to jumpstart, and he couldn't jumpstart. This team, your home team last night, in what was a huge game, because you could have almost sealed the deal up 3-1. The best player on the planet wasn't there, either mentally or physically. He just wasn't quite there. And I agree with you. The series-changing, if not series-saving move was made by Steve Kerr when he went small from the start and started an Andre Iguodala, who has been his best defender on LeBron, even though he hasn't been much of a defender in the previous few games because LeBron was still getting his 40. But last night, Iguodala outplayed the King in the King's home on both ends of the floor, both defensively and offensively, because, as you point out, he made some big threes, did Iggy. He scored 22 to LeBron's 20. They did finally start running a second defender at LeBron, and his usage rate, a stat I love, fell dramatically from 45% of the time he had the ball in his hands in Game 3 to last night only 30% of the time. And guess who had 31% of the time the ball was in his hands? Mozgov. So LeBron's making the correct basketball play because the lineup is so small on defense. He's feeding Mozgov against a Draymond who they list him at 6'7". What is he, 6'6" maybe?
He's about 6'7". He's a legit 6'7".
Somewhere in there. But again, LeBron James is bigger than any starter that Golden State started last night. LeBron is bigger than Draymond Green. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
Okay, so to give the ball up to Mozgov is not right to me. Because here's my point. And again, I picked the Warriors to win the game last night, so obviously I have a rooting interest in the game. I thought the Cavs had the momentum going to the fourth quarter. I know that Steph made a late three in the third quarter, but it still felt like it was your game to win. It felt to me like, scaring me to death, bless you.
Thank you.
It felt to me like that game was on a silver platter for the King to win, to go up 3-1, and maybe come close to winning you a championship here. And I got to tell you, I'm just looking at the numbers. LeBron James scored 0 in the fourth quarter. 0. This is the King at home, scored 0. He only took 2 shots in the fourth quarter. Are you kidding me? I don't care how many times Mozgov had an open dunk. The impact plays are made by the King at home. The psychological crushers are made when he gets loose on a dunk or makes a three or whatever happens, or makes late free throws. And I kept waiting for him to lead the charge, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. And all of a sudden, what I thought was a pretty close game, it was Cavs
they
down
pulled within
6.
3.
Yeah, then they pulled within 3. And all of a sudden I look up, and the final score is the Warriors won by 21 points. Are you kidding me? They pulled away and won by 21 points. I told you yesterday, we've both been covering these finals for a long time. The one thing we both love about the NBA playoffs, the momentum swings are wild, they're unpredictable, and the perception can change overnight from Bay Area parade to Cleveland parade, and now it's back to, it's a Bay Area parade coming. Maybe not. Maybe it's sitting right on a silver platter for the King to take back over, because I remind you, your Cavs should have won both those games in Golden State. Your thoughts?
Well, it's a couple of points. First of all, you're incredibly valid with what you're saying about his performance in the fourth quarter. You can't watch your team nosedive while you just attempt 2 shots.
2?
That's ridiculous. But the flip side to it is that the reason why, and you're certainly right, he doesn't deserve a pass. I just don't think he deserves your level of vitriol. And the reason I say that is because you have to take into consideration this wasn't a closeout Game 7. This wasn't a game clincher for Golden State. You're up 2-1. Your mentality is that, okay, this is now going to become a 3-game series, and ultimately it's just one of those scenarios where we just don't have it tonight. That's entirely possible. Mm-hmm. Now, to me, when I looked at him earlier in the game, Skip, they doubled him immediately. The minute he touched the ball, it wasn't just Andre Iguodala. They sent somebody else to him.
Finally.
When that happens.
Finally. They heard you.
Well, once that happens, you're right. He made the right play to give it to Mozgov.
Yep.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with this. There was no problem with the way Tristan Thompson played.
No.
There was no problem with the way Timothy Mozgov played.
Yep.
There was a problem with the way the guards played, because the guards allowed folks to then step down and suffocate the paint and help out with the big boys, because J.R. Smith, open shots, clanking. Matthew Dellavedova, open shots, clanking.
Yep.
Iman Shumpert reminded us he's a defensive ace. He's no shooting
read
guard.
Their totals. You have them there?
Yes, I do. Their totals for the 3-point shooting was 1 of 5 from 3-point range for Iman Shumpert, 2 of 9 for Dellavedova, 0 of 8 for J.R. Smith. By the way, that's the most attempts for somebody that didn't make a field goal or 3-point field goal in NBA Finals history.
Yep.
So J.R. Smith just broke a record yesterday, going 0 for 8 from 3-point range. Okay? And to his credit, I'm not going to sit there. He killed himself. He doesn't need us to do it, because he was man enough to acknowledge that he played like horse bleep. Yep. In the end, you're talking 3 for 22 from 3-point range. That is abysmal. And so when I look at it from that perspective, if you're LeBron and you're playing and you're getting doubled, and then you're kicking it out to open guys and they can't make shots, you have no hope. And if you've got life at the end of the tunnel, because it's now become a 3-game series, it stands to reason why you're not going to go all out per se in that fourth quarter, because you're only 6 deep and you're going to have to play the next 3 games. if there's going to be 3 games.
No, it makes sense. It was a rough night for LeBron James, as we just discussed. He was just 2 assists shy of a triple-double for a second night in a row, but you talked about the cut that he suffered. Let's take a look at that video on his head late in the second when he went up for a layup and landed out of bounds and somehow fell into that cameraman. His head hit the camera, came back up. He had a huge cut on his head, and Stephen A., you talked about it. It wasn't